Hello, everyone. I am Ben, and this is a story how I am being called selfish by my own family. There's something I never said out loud, but I used to repeat it in my head like a quiet prayer. As long as mom and dad don't get divorced, I can handle anything. And I really believe that. I believe that if I was good enough, smart enough, polite enough, then maybe this family wouldn't fall apart. I believe that if I just stayed quiet, didn't bother anyone, didn't make things worse, my parents might learn to love each other again. I started believing that when I was 10. Back then, I didn't know much about marriage. I only knew that the arguments after dinner kept getting louder, and the space between my parents on the couch kept growing wider. There were times I silently counted how many days they were gone without speaking. There was even a time I set an alarm on an old phone for 8 p.m. every night, just to remind myself to smile and tell a funny story, hoping it would make them less angry at each other. I don't remember if it ever worked. I just remember I tried. I'm the middle child of 3. My older brother is a few years ahead, and my younger sibling is 4 years behind. They were carefree the way kids are supposed to be. But me? I wasn't. Somehow I became the emotionally aware one. The first to notice when Mom was sad. The only one who realized Dad was scrubbing the dishes a little too hard. The one who quietly cleared the table, just to keep the mood from snapping in half. I didn't ask to be the middleman, but no one else did it, so I did. Once during a fight, my mom shouted through tears, "No one in this family understands me, except you." And that made me feel so sad. Sad because she was right. And even sadder because I wished I didn't understand so well. I didn't grow up with an obviously bad childhood. I wasn't starved. I wasn't hit. I went to school, I had clothes, I got birthday wishes. But I grew up with a constant, invisible fear that if I wasn't careful, this family would fall apart, and no one else seemed to see it as clearly as I did. There were nights I couldn't sleep, not because of homework, but because I could hear my mom crying through the wall, the muffled sobs, the sighs, the rustle of pages flipping in a book, like a sad soundtrack I knew by heart. I never asked if she was okay. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, telling myself, don't give her another reason to be upset tomorrow. For a long time, I thought that was normal, that all kids eventually had to learn how to grow up. But then I started meeting new friends. Friends who could call their mom's mom without flinching. Friends who could disagree with their dads without worrying they'd start yelling again. And slowly, I realized something. Not every kid grows up tiptoeing around their parents' emotions. And that realization made me feel small. Really small. If you asked me what made me feel the most alone as a child, I wouldn't say it was the silence. It was that feeling. That I could disappear from the house for a while and no one would even notice. Of course. I don't remember exactly when my mom first started confiding in me. I just remember it began with a few muttered sentences in the kitchen. "I'm so tired, sweetheart. Your dad doesn't care about me anymore. No one sees how much I'm suffering." At first I thought she was just venting. I stood still, nodded gently, and tried to seem like I understood. But over time, those passing comments turned into full-on therapy sessions. Unexpected, uninvited, and constant. They happened any time. On the drive to school, while peeling fruit, even when I was doing homework. And I sat there quietly listening, not because I truly understood, but because I didn't think I had the option to do anything else. My mom started using me as her emotional dumping ground, talking about her unhappy marriage, about the dreams she never got to chase, about feeling trapped, betrayed, invisible. I was 12. I didn't even fully understand what marriage was, had never been in love, never felt trapped in a life I didn't choose. But somehow, I'd been assigned the role of nodder, comforter, listener. One night, after a fight with my dad, she sat on my bed and said, "You're the only one I can talk to." I nodded, but inside something twisted, because I didn't want to be the only one. I just wanted to be a normal kid. The kind of kid who gets asked, "Did you have a good day at school?" Not the one who has to spend the whole night comforting her mom after a math test. I didn't resent her. I knew she was hurting. But I also started to realize I had no space left for my own feelings. I began having unexplained headaches, staying up late even when I was exhausted, because my mind just wouldn't shut off. I avoided going out, avoided friends, because I was scared someone might ask, "Why do you seem so down lately?" And how was I supposed to answer that? How do you say, I'm not sad about my own life, I'm just carrying someone else's emotions, and I never got to choose it. Sometimes I felt like I was stuck in a play, the role of the good kid, the accidental best friend to her mother, the peacemaker in a cold, broken marriage. And I didn't dare break character, because I was scared that if I stopped listening, my mom would fall apart. If I refused to play along, she'd feel abandoned all over again. I prioritized her feelings over my own, to the point where I couldn't even tell what I was feeling anymore. I once tried telling my dad that Mom was leaning on me too much emotionally. He looked surprised for a second, and then said, "Yeah, your mom gets moody sometimes. Don't pay it too much attention." That was the first and last time I brought it up. I lived in a house where everyone's emotions were huge, except mine. When Mom cried, people worried. When Dad got mad, people walked on eggshells. When my brother had outbursts, people adjusted to him. When my younger siblings sulked, people comforted them. And me? If I showed any sadness, I heard, "Can't you see how stressed your mom already is? Don't add to her worries. Stop being so quiet. It's depressing. Why are you acting so cold? Don't you care about your parents?" I wasn't allowed to feel, not in a real way. I was only allowed to be sad if it didn't make anyone else uncomfortable. So I started shrinking. I listened to music constantly, not for fun, but to drown out the noise in my head. I wrote in a journal and then did something and then ripped the pages up. Because I was afraid someone might find it and say I was too dramatic. I kept living, kept getting good grades, kept helping Mom in the kitchen, watching my siblings, smoothing things over when my parents fought. I did everything like a machine running on a set program, but no one ever stopped to ask, does the machine ever feel like it's overheating? Last summer I signed up for a 15-day cross-state outdoor program. It was a wilderness experience for teens. No parents, no siblings, no one I knew. Just a group of kids my age from all over, hiking, pitching tents, cooking over fires, climbing rocks, telling dumb stories under the stars. Look, I didn't really know why I said yes. Maybe I needed a break, and maybe Mom suggested it, or maybe deep down I just wanted to leave home for a while, though I wasn't brave enough to admit that back then. I still remember the morning I got on the van. My heart was racing, my palms were sweaty. I didn't know anyone. Everyone seemed nice, but distant. I didn't expect much. But it was that distance, that space, that gave me my first real breath of air in years. No one in that group knew my parents argued every night. No one knew I'd overheard Mom say, "I wish I could just leave it all behind." No one expected me to nod and understand when they were upset. No one required me to hold it together while falling apart myself. I got to just be me. Not the bridge, not the mature middle child, not the peacekeeper who stays silent so the house stays calm. Just a 15-year-old kid slipping in the mud during a hike, laughing so hard I couldn't breathe. That first night at camp, one of the guys pulled out a ukulele. Everyone sat around singing old songs, sharing goofy stories. I sat quietly for a while, then I laughed. Really laughed. A laugh that didn't need permission. I'd forgotten what that felt like. And when it finally came back, it almost didn't feel real. But it was. For the first time in so long, I wasn't bracing for footsteps in the kitchen or the tight faces across the dinner table. I slept better than I had in years. I ate well. I laughed more. I talked about random dreams and favorite foods and dumb hobbies. Sometimes I forgot my phone entirely. And that's when I realized I didn't want to go back. On day 14, we sat in a circle to share thoughts before heading home. All I said was, "I just wish home let me breathe the way this trip did." No one pressed me, but one of the girls quietly placed a hand on my shoulder. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. That one moment almost broke me into tears. Day 15, the van pulled up to the meeting point. My mom came to pick me up. I smiled, not out of joy, but out of politeness. She hugged me, then launched right into complaints about Dad forgetting the trash again, my little sister slacking off in school, and how stressed she was at work. I was still putting my backpack in the trunk. The trip hadn't even fully left my system, and I was already back in my old role. That night, Mom pulled me into the kitchen. "The house has been a war zone. You're off having fun, and I'm losing my mind here. I don't even know what to do anymore." I stood there gripping the chair edge, and all I could think was, I've been home less than 5 hours. I didn't blame her. I knew she was hurting. But I couldn't help feeling a kind of exhaustion that sat deep in my chest. I just learned how to smile for real. And in one afternoon I was forced to put that mask back on, the same one that nearly suffocated me for years. I started pulling away, not dramatically, not with some big speech. I just talked less, smiled politely, stopped volunteering stories, stopped asking how others were unless I truly meant it. I went to my room earlier, wore my headphones. Sometimes I pretended to be asleep. Mom asked, "What's going on?" "You're different since the trip." Dad said, "He's got an attitude lately." I heard it all, but I didn't explain. Because how do you say, "I'm just trying to save myself"? Because if I keep going like before, I won't have anything left of me. I'm not sure what exactly changed me. All I know is those 15 days taught me I deserve to breathe. I deserve to be a kid, not someone forced to grow up too soon. I'm so tired, sweetie. Your dad doesn't care about me anymore. No one sees how much I suffer. At first I thought she was just venting. I stood there, nodded gently, tried to seem understanding. But over time, those small comments turned into full-blown therapy sessions I never signed up for. They happened any time. In the car on the way to school, while she peeled fruit, even in the middle of me doing homework. And I just sat there and listened. Not because I understood it all, but because I didn't know I was allowed to do anything else. My mom started using me as her emotional outlet, about her unhappy marriage, about the dreams she gave up in her youth, about feeling stuck, betrayed, invisible. I was 12. I didn't even understand what marriage really meant. I'd never dated. I'd never felt what it was like to be trapped in a life I didn't choose. But I became the nodder, the listener, the comforter. One night, after another fight with my dad, she sat on my bed and said, "You're the only one I can talk to." I nodded, but deep inside, something ached. Because I didn't want to be the only one. I just wanted to be a regular kid. A kid who got asked, "Did you have fun at school today?" Not the one who had to hold their mother's sadness all evening after trying to survive a math test. I didn't blame my mom. I knew she was in pain. But I also started to realize I had no room left for my own feelings. I started getting unexplained headaches. I stayed up late even when I was exhausted, because my mind wouldn't shut off. I avoided going out, avoided friends, because I was afraid someone might ask, "Why do you seem so quiet lately?" And how was I supposed to explain it? I'm not sad about my own life, I'm just carrying someone else's pain. And I never got to say yes to it. Sometimes I felt like I was trapped in a role. The good daughter. The accidental best friend to my mom. The peacemaker in a cold, broken marriage. And I didn't dare break character, because I was scared. If I stayed silent, my mom would fall apart. If I said no, she'd feel abandoned again. So I put her emotions above my own. Until I couldn't even tell what my emotions were anymore. Once, I tried to tell my dad. Mom's been confiding in me a lot. Too much. He looked at me, surprised, then said, "Oh, your mom's just dramatic. Don't take it seriously." That was the only time I ever brought it up. And I knew. There wouldn't be a second. I lived in a house where every feeling was allowed to take up space, except mine. When my mom cried, everyone cared. When Dad got angry, everyone tiptoed. When my brother lashed out, people gave him what he wanted. When my little sister pouted, she was comforted. But when I was upset, they'd say, "Don't you see how tired your mom is? Don't make her worry more. Stop being so quiet, it feels heavy. Why are you acting cold? Don't you love your parents?" I wasn't allowed to feel sad in my own way. I could only be sad if it didn't affect anyone else. So I shrank. I started listening to music. Not for fun, but to drown out the noise in my own head. I kept a journal, but tore out every page, afraid someone would read it and think I was being dramatic. I kept going. I kept getting good grades. Kept helping Mom in the kitchen, watching my siblings, smoothing over arguments. I did everything like a machine running on autopilot, but no one ever stopped to ask, "Does the machine feel overwhelmed?" Let me know when you're ready to continue. This part of the story is so raw and deeply human. It's really powerful. I begged them not to make me go. And I said it clearly. I don't want to be trapped for a week with people who think I'm wrong just because I need space. I don't feel comfortable. I don't want to fake it. Smile just so we can pretend happy family. But the answer was still, the whole family needs to go. This trip is for bonding. Stop being so selfish. So I went. Arizona in March was dry and hot with dust hanging in the air. We arrived in the afternoon. Mom showed me the itinerary. Hiking, national parks, stargazing, family dinners every evening. I nodded. I didn't argue, but I didn't smile either. I didn't have the energy left to resist. From the very first day, I knew I had stepped back into my old role. Only now I wasn't 12 anymore. I wasn't pretending to be fine as well as I used to. I wasn't so good at automatically understanding everyone else's emotions anymore. I was quiet. And to them, that silence meant rebellion. Disrespect, ruining the vibe. I didn't want to go to the pool. I was tired. I hadn't slept well the night before. You're only 16 and you're already this weak? Must be all that junk you eat since you started dating. No wonder you've got no energy. I asked to stay back at the hotel after breakfast. I'd already eaten. I wasn't hungry. Dad snapped, always pulling away. If you didn't want to come, you should have stayed home in the first place. No one asked, are you okay? They only asked, what's wrong with you? Why do you look like a walking corpse? And the saddest part? Because I no longer had the strength to pretend I was fine, they started projecting every emotional failure they never wanted to face onto me. He's ruining the whole trip. What kind of attitude is that? You've made your mother upset again. Isn't that enough? I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I didn't storm off. I just sat there staring out the window of the moving car as it rolled through the desert. People think rage is loud. But for me, rage was a kind of emptiness. So deep I couldn't feel anything anymore. I wasn't sad. I wasn't angry. I was just numb. They called me cold, but no one saw how hot I used to burn. Now I was just ash. And they looked at that ash and said, he must not care. On the fourth night of the trip during dinner, my mom turned to me and said, you feel like a stranger. You really want to push this whole family out of your life, don't you? I looked at her, and I didn't nod. I didn't shake my head. I just looked. Because how do you tell the woman who made her own child her personal therapist at 12 years old that she was the one who pushed me away first? That night, after Mom said I felt like a stranger, the whole family fell silent. But this wasn't the usual silence we used to keep the peace. This one was heavy. It filled the hotel room like a block of concrete hanging in the air. I didn't apologize. I didn't explain. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I needed to. I lay in bed and the lights off, ceiling barely visible in the dark. I wondered if I smiled, if I joined in, if I acted like nothing's wrong. Would everyone else feel better? Maybe. Probably, yes. But what about me? I thought about all the times I'd played along just to keep things smooth, smiling even when I was exhausted, nodding when I disagreed, tagging along on plans when all I wanted was to sit alone and breathe, and all I ever got in return was this temporary approval. Good boy! You're finally behaving. Mom was proud of you for trying. But after that, it was always the same. Me, alone again, exhausted. I started to see it clearly. I didn't ruin this vacation. I just couldn't play the lead role in a script I never auditioned for. I wasn't the peacekeeper's son. I wasn't the funny kid who pulls the family together. I was just a 16-year-old who'd spent too long being someone else's emotional backbone, and I was trying to breathe for myself for once. I started writing my thoughts in the Notes app on my phone, not to post, not to share, just to remind myself that silence didn't mean emptiness. I was angry. I was sad. I had 1,000 things I wanted to say. I just chose not to. Not because I was afraid, but because I had learned that sometimes silence is the last way to stop yourself from shattering completely. The next day, they acted a little different. No harsh tones, no forced group activities, just soft reminders like, join us if you want. We saved a seat for you in case you change your mind. I didn't change my mind. I still sat alone in the hotel cafe, still wore my headphones during dinner, still asked to stay back if I didn't feel like talking, and for the first time, I didn't feel guilty about it. No one knew that in those quiet moments I was slowly rebuilding the parts of me that had been worn down by emotional demands I never asked for. I used to fear silence meant I'd be seen as distant. Now I understand. Silence isn't avoidance. It's the final no you say when all your previous words were ignored like they didn't matter. I used to think I was the problem. The reason Mom was sad. The dark cloud that ruined every family trip. The one who felt too much but lacked family spirit. But I don't think that anymore. I didn't ruin the vacation. I didn't make anyone suffer. I just couldn't keep pretending. Because here's the truth adults often forget. Being quiet doesn't mean being cold. Not speaking doesn't mean you're not hurting. I used to live in fear so much that I became better at reading other people's emotions than my own. I knew when someone was about to get mad. I knew the exact moment Mom would start crying. I knew how to step around moods just right to keep the peace. But in learning all that, I forgot to ask myself what I was feeling. That trip wasn't a disaster. It was a turning point. The first time I stopped trying to make everyone else comfortable. The first time I chose inner peace over the outer harmony. And if one day my mom understands why I was silent, I'll be there ready to listen. But until that day comes, I'll keep learning how to say no. So I can finally hear a yes from myself.